Well, the battle for Pennsylvania Avenue has moved to Sesame Street, folks. The Obama campaign has released a new ad based on Governor Romney's comments during the debate of refusing to borrow money from China to fund PBS. Here's a little bit of that.
Bernie Madoff, Ken Lay, Dennis Kozlowski, criminals, gluttons of greed, and the evil genius who towered over them. One man has the guts to speak his name.
Big Bird, Big Bird, Big Bird.
It's me, Big Bird.
Oh, so now the Republican National Committee has their own ad featuring one of my favorite Sesame Street characters, the Count, who is tallying up the amount of times that the president has mentioned Big Bird and Elmo, while apparently not mentioning the economy. 0 you see there for the economy and 0 for Libya. You've got 8 Big Birds and 5 mentions of Elmo, according to the Romney campaign. So joined now by experts on Sesame Street issues, Rich Lowry, the editor of the National Review and a Fox News contributor, and Marjorie Clifton, former consultant to the Obama campaign and CEO of Clifton Consulting. You know, I bet all of us grew up on Sesame Street. And it taught us, you know, how to count. I learned a lot from Big Bird as well, and I never thought in my career that I would be talking to you guys about this. So, but we are. So, Rich, let me start with you. You know, what is that ad effective? First of all, it dredges up a lot of folks, Bernie Madoff and Ken. You know, people we haven't seen in ages.
No, I don't think it is. Look, they're not going to run it anywhere, actually, on TV. I think it's meant mostly to sort of dredge up conversation on cable and online. And look, I mean, Big Bird is, it's time for Big Bird to get out of the federal nest. Maybe he can't fly, but he certainly can walk. He's an able-bodied bird. He doesn't need to be on the dole. The Sesame Workshop that produces this thing, they make something like $50 million on merchandising every single year. If this show with all these beloved characters isn't commercially viable, well, then it should go out of business. But we shouldn't be spending almost $500 million a year when we're $16 trillion in debt to and sending it to the corporation for public broadcasting.
So the argument is that you know, Big Bird is symbolic, Marjorie, of decisions that need to be made in terms of what the federal government will spend money on and won't.
Right, and the Republicans are using the count, again, to tout how many times has he talked about the economy. The problem is, I think the count might need an after-school course in remedial math, because the fact of the matter is Obama has actually been out talking about the economy every day since the debate. In fact, yesterday was talking about it in California when dedicating a monument to Cesar Chavez. I mean, maybe the count only counts it when he says tax cuts for the rich, but I wish he had been at the Republican National Convention when Romney forgot to mention Afghanistan or the troops. So I think the count might also be symbolic of some lack of math and, you know, the need for public funding for a lot of things, like education.
So where does this go, Rich, in terms of the debate going ahead? And do you think President Obama is wise to, you know, even continue to sort of put this issue out there of Big Bird and put it in this ad?
No,
or does it make it look like he's avoiding the more serious, weighty topics of the day?
Well, one, it reminds everyone of the debate, which everyone agrees was a disaster for him. Two, I mean, it's really pathetic that he can do all these clever zingers and witty lines about Sesame Street 2 or 3 days later, after the debate, when he's no longer on the stage, and someone feeds them to him and loads them up into his teleprompter. And two, more substantively, this country is $16 trillion in debt. Under the president's budget, we'll have about $25 trillion in debt in 10 years, and you're telling me we can't cut $500 million to an enterprise that will be able to stand on its own through its own fundraising. It's ridiculous.
What about that, Marjorie? I mean, it's 1/100th of 1% of the federal budget, the money that goes to PBS. But Rich makes a good point. You know, they make a ton of money off of all this Big Bird and Sesame Street stuff. I've got a ton of it in my basement to prove it. You know, is it time to cut them loose?
Well, I think the bigger point was Big Bird was meant to be a Mitt Romney zinger talking public funding, but Obama used it because it was the only actual talking point or specific that Romney did mention about his economic plans, and that's why they've run with it. And you have to look at it. In the last debate, or the last election cycle, I should say, Joe the Plumber is the only thing that I can remember. I mean, it was Joe the Plumber this, Joe the Plumber that. And the Republican National Convention actually built their entire convention around something Obama said about you didn't build it, and taken out of context, by the way. But
one of the reasons Romney won the debate, everyone agrees he won the debate, is he had so many more details and specifics than the president. He was able actually to think on his feet and debate in real time and not be dependent on a teleprompter 2 or 3 days later.
All right, we got to leave it there, guys. Thank you very much, Marjorie and Rich and Big Bird and Count and Elmo and all the guys. We thank them.
Far more fun.
Exactly.
Definitely far more fun.
Jenna Lee standing by. Happening Now rolls your way in 10 short.